spoken quite a bit about the 80s, a period that we remember well. Sebastian Coe's great 800 metre record. You enjoy the 800 metres. Do you not wish sometimes that had been your event rather than race walking?
I do sometimes. I've got Albert Johnson to blame for that. He influenced me. Not really. I moved into race. I started off as a sprinter, doing the 1 to the 800 metres and a little bit of cross country, although I wasn't brilliant at it. And that was my first love, really. Because when the Olympics were on, it was always the 8 and the 15 that I sort of gravitated towards. Walk did hold an appeal, partly through Albert. It was the challenge of the walk, it was the discipline, it was demanding that I thought, oh, this is really good. So I kind of
So what age were you?
Well, I won the Victor Ladorum at Ballacameen. One of my claim to fame is beating Dave Anderson in first and second year. Cup race walking. About a year later, I noticed that my sprinting was all messed up. It was where it ended, really.
To clarify, what age were you when you first got the coaching for race walking?
About 13.
13. Important to a race walker to learn the technique?
I think so. When you're young, you're obviously flexible and you can pick up good habits and techniques. Yeah, but I wouldn't say you should train particularly hard during your teenage life.
You went to the English schools.
I went to the English schools, that's right, walker. And had and Lancashire prior to that. Much the same route that you went down, actually. And
how fast were you walking as a junior?
Well, breaking 16 minutes for 2 miles, and I think for a 5k I was doing 14:15. It was so. I know when I was 17, coming up 18, I was doing about 48.5 minutes.
Right.
Which was in about the top 6. I left school in 1971.
And you went to the Commonwealth Games?
I went
in 1978 and
78, that's right.
So how did your walking career develop between 71?
Well, I had a bit of a lull, actually. I went back into football. About 72, 73 I started again, and then I had sort of went hot and cold, and then about the second half of 76, about 2 years before the Commonwealth Games, I thought, no, I've had enough of football, and I'll have a go. So,
were you walking then for 20 and 30k?
20k I was down into the 95.5 minutes, and I think I was about 2:34, 2:35, 46, 47 minutes or something like that.
And you also went through to the 82 Commonwealth Games.
Yes,
how did those 4 years go? Did you improve, or was
well, I took about a year out as well. Shortly at 79, and then about towards the end of 1980, I picked it up again. Kept quite fit, but it was. I think in a 4-year cycle, I think you're allowed to have a year where you just tinker a bit.
But do you consider to be your best walk?
One of my best walks, actually, believe it or not, I think, was the boundary stroll, where I was about a minute behind you. I think I did about 2:2, and I think I went through, well, I don't really know how accurate the distance was, but I went through 10 miles in 76:59. I mean, it was a very tough 10 mile, and I was in really good shape about 4 or 5 months before the Commonwealth Games in Brisbane,
yes.
But I just got injured, and I'm afraid I lost minutes.
We talked earlier about how the Isle of Man's been, I think we almost used the word obsessed with long distances.
Yes, absolutely.
Your achievements are probably not so well known. Do you ever wish that instead of going to the Commonwealth Games, you'd done the TT walk or the end-to-end walk or the parish walk and things like that?
No, I don't think so. Those trips are, trips of a lifetime. I think everybody aspires to sort of mix with the big company. There's unfinished business. I haven't done the parish, and I wish I had have done it roughly the time in 82, maybe the year later, when there was nothing doing. Because I know, I think I could have done, 16 hours, when I was occasionally going out for 8 and 10 hour walks, and it was no problem to me.
Your career took you to the RAF.
Yes.
Tell us what period that covered, and whether that was whether the race walking fitted around that, or whether you had the opportunity to race walk.
Well, unfortunately, there was quite a good RAF team of probably 7 or 8 walkers. But the trouble is, we never used to meet enough. We never have training squads like they would do now, perhaps.
What years were you in the RAF?
I was in between 74 and 1980, but my walking really was between 77 and 80. It was sort of like, you know, the late 70s really.
When would you say there was never a dramatic announcement, but you did you drift out of walking, or was there one sort of final walk you did? I can't remember.
Yeah, I did drift. I just sort of just tapered right off really. I suppose after 82,
right,
I made 1 or 2 little half-hearted gestures coming back, but I had no real big ideas of training for the Commonwealth Games again after that. I suppose it would be at that time where I should have had a crack at the parish really, the mid-80s. But I started to drift into running.
Yes.
And I got hooked on that.
So how long have you been running for? I know roughly since the mid-80s, but when have been the sort of peak times when you've really taken it seriously, and what have you achieved?
Well, I would say the mid to late 80s really. Sort of ran my best 800 when I was 36, did 2.3, and I was running 55s and 56s, which wasn't bad really, because I couldn't sprint for toffee, and that was basically down to the walking. You know, it was, if you ever see a lot of walkers running, they're stiff-legged running, isn't it? There's no knee lift. I mean, all my running I was robbed of the walking, robbed me of all the speed I had when I was a kid. But
you had the endurance.
Yeah, I had the endurance, and I think that distances like 1500 was the middle. It's still speed, but it wasn't out and out sprinting. And I used to enjoy when I got into veterans running. I used to represent Western Athletic in the late 80s. We had some good runners there, and I was actually running the 4x400 metres as the weakest leg out when people like Gordon, Crowe, Alistair, and these guys, and they were sprinters, and Alistair Audsley, and people like that, and I was running 55s and 56s, which was quite a bit slower than them, but it was just enough just to
So what's happened in the last couple of years?
Well, the last couple of years I've spent a lot of the time being injured really, on and off. I've been very lucky with injury, in as much that I've hardly been injured at all. As soon as I hit the big 5-0, that was it really, payback time. It's
You got some views on this about people's being able to keep going longer, depending on...
I think so. We've discussed this before. Some of the best veterans around, certainly in the track and field anyway, are the guys who were really good at school, or quite good at school, maybe in the top 3 or 4, and then maybe they got married or went to college and went to football, rugby or something like that, and just drifted out of the sport. But then maybe they had sons or something like that, and then in the mid to late 30s they got back into it through their children, and of course by then the veterans was really taking off, and then they thought, oh, I'll have another go at this. So it was like second times round the clock.
But why are they better?
I think they're better than some of the guys who stuck with it all the way through, is because they're fresher, and they've come back and their batteries are recharged, and they've looked after themselves. You know, they haven't put weight on, and the joints in better shape and everything, and they're just younger men really.
So if you get your joints and everything sorted out, what would you like to do before you finally hung up your little spikes, walking shoes, running shoes, cross country shoes?
Well, one of my things at 50 was to break a 5-minute mile. I did that on the road with a generous wind behind me, so you can take that as seriously as you want to. But I did 5.3 or 5.4 when I was 49, and I promised that I would get 5 seconds faster than that a year later, but I didn't do that, and it never quite happened.